Well, good morning. Hey, and welcome back to another daily devotional here at Cold Creek Church. I'm Justin Brody, pastor of Cold Creek Church, and we like to go through these devotionals here, verse by verse, through the Bible to really unpack all that's in the Bible, verse by verse, to be challenged by what we find there and to be changed by what we find there. And we've been in the book of Jude, and I just want to admit up front, like the book of Jude is a very complicated book. It's one of the most confusing books in all of the Bible, and yet it's one of the shortest books in all of the Bible. And so it's like a very compact and complex place to go. And yet this is where I felt the Spirit lead us to go and get in the Word together. So that's what we're doing. And yet it has not come without its challenges. Today, uh, we're going to continue on Jude's theme of like beware and cautious of those who have come in the church who look like good leaders, look like godly leaders, and yet are distorting and dissuading people from the truth of the gospel. And so it's continuing down this path and just kind of exposing what these leaders look like. What are the traits of bad leadership? What are the traits of false teachers? And one of my favorite leadership guys in culture today, he's still living, he's still alive, he's still writing, he's still leading, is a guy named John Maxwell. John Maxwell has written books. He's really kind of revived the discussion on leadership, business leadership, ministry leadership, organizational leadership of all kinds, general leadership, and really revived that conversation over the past couple of decades. And one of his favorites, most simple, most renowned quotes about what leadership is, or the importance of it, I mean, is that everything rises and falls on leadership. Good leaders create good organizations. Bad leaders create bad organizations. When you look at the increase or incline of certain movements and organizations versus the decline and destruction of certain organizations throughout time, throughout history, it typically always revolves around the state of leadership. So therefore, he says the rise and fall of everything is on the basis of leadership. And Jude's kind of pulling that thread, and he's showing us what bad leadership in the church, bad leadership is going to look like, and therefore beware. Here's what they're going to here's what they're going to do, and here's what that's going to look like. So let's just jump in. We're going to do this a verse by verse commentary style. That's the whole thing. We're going to run through 8 verses. We're going to go kind of quick. We're going to try and unpack things as we go. So let's just begin. He continues on his line of thought, and he says, in the same way, these people, he's still talking about these leaders, these false teachers who have become in the church and are distorting the gospel. These people who claim authority from their dreams live immoral lives, defy authority, and scoff at supernatural beings, or just let's just think supernatural things, right? Okay, so what we can tell from this is that these people who he's talking about claim authority from their dreams. Where do dreams come from? Dreams come from inside of us. That's something that we have going on inside of us. So it's our dreams. This could be something inside of our hopes, our wishes, our desires. They're claiming some kind of authority that's coming from within them. It's not outside of them, it's within them. And that's kind of a popular narrative in culture today, is that you should claim your own authority. You should decide what's true, what's false. You should decide which beliefs are right, which beliefs are wrong. You should decide what's true about the Bible, what's not true about the Bible. You should decide which pages you can read, which pages you can't, and you become your own authority, because that's innately, when you defy authority and you reject authority, what you're doing is you're saying, I am going to become authority, because we all have to have some authority somewhere. Like each of us has an authority. It's not a question of whether you have one. The question is, where are you going to place it? Who gets to have authority in my life? Do I have the authority in my life? Or does God have the authority in my life? Or does work have the authority in my life? Does status and what people think of me, does that have authority in my life? Does science and what science says about reality, does that take authority in my life? We have to decide what's going to ultimately shape what we think is true or false. And these leaders have claimed that their authority counts, and it comes from inside them. It's internal authority. They've decided for themselves based on some dreams, and that's caused some immorality to come about in their life, and now they're scoffing at supernatural things. And let's keep going with that point into verse 9. Even Michael, one of the mightiest of angels, did not dare accuse the devil of blasphemy, but simply said, "The Lord rebuke you." Even when Michael was arguing with the devil about Moses' body. Now, this is a very interesting verse. It's, again, very complex. So many questions come from this one verse in Scripture. But just before this, remember in verse 8, it said, these leaders scoff at supernatural beings. He's making the point that there's Michael, this archangel, in the spiritual heavenly places. Remember, you have to understand that this is a spiritual conversation he's bringing us into, that we have the embodied souls who are human beings, and then there's unembodied souls who are angels. And that means that we can hear from Scripture about things concerning the invisible world that we don't see right now, the unembodied souls of heaven, and the conversations that they may have been having. Okay. And so he says, the mightiest of angels, Michael, did not rebuke the devil himself, but acclaimed God's authority by saying, "The Lord rebuke you." So he's saying that Michael even had to revere such spiritual things in dark things, even with so much authority. He had to appeal to the Lord himself. He had to appeal to God to rebuke the devil. He had to appeal to the Lord. He wouldn't even take on the authority of himself. He had to appeal to the authority of God. And so these people scoff at these things that they don't understand. It goes on to say in verse 10, they scoff. They don't get it, and therefore they make fun of it. Like unthinking animals, they do whatever their instincts tell them, and so bring about their own destruction. And so here we see a shape of leadership that is closed-minded. They're not open to understanding things they don't know, and they make fun of those things, those supernatural, spiritual things, because they think they're the ultimate authority. Like bad leadership says, I'm the authority. I'm going to laugh at you for having other ideas. I'm going to be closed-minded. I'm going to be unthinking. I'm going to just follow the course of my instincts. What are my instincts? Well, my natural instincts in the flesh typically are pretty selfish. There's a lot of selfish ambition rooted in those instincts, and that selfish ambition leads to the fall. Pride comes before a fall. It says in Proverbs 14:12 that there is a way that seems right to a man, but in the end it leads to death. If we follow our instincts and just allow them to lead us instead of leading our instincts, if you follow your heart instead of leading your heart, it will end up in destruction. And so he continues, what sorrow awaits these leaders? What sorrow awaits the people that are claiming their own authority in life, that they're just following their innermost dreams and desires and hoping that's going to fulfill them, that they've become their own boss of their world. They've decided for themselves what's right, what's true, what's real. They've rejected God of who he is, and how that leads to a life of destruction, not only for ourselves, but destruction for those around us. And so what sorrow awaits them? For they follow in the footsteps of Cain, it goes on to say, who killed his brother. This is in the early books of Genesis. Cain got jealous of his brother. That led to death, following that instinct, led to murder. Then Balaam, like Balaam, they deceive people for money. Another story in Scripture where a guy deceives a king and tries to get behind the king to deceive the people following him for money. It was straight up manipulation. This is the result of that. And then Korah, like Korah, says they perish in their rebellion. Another story of Old Testament where Korah had tried to get behind godly leadership, get around them, and then persuade people to go up against them and rebel against the godly leadership because he wanted his own fame. He wanted his own status. He wanted to be like God himself. He wanted to be authority himself. So again, pictures of poor leadership. They deceive. They rebel against what's good. They go their own direction. They end up in murder. They end up cheating and lying and hurting themselves and hurting people. We have to watch out for bad leadership. Verse 12, when these people eat with you in your fellowship meals. So just having dinner, that's all that means. When they're having dinner with you, maybe again, he's talking to believers here, but the situation is like, who are you eating with? Who are you closely fellowshipping with? Not in a way that you're trying to make impact on someone's life. Maybe you're fellowshipping with someone that needs to see the light, and you're being the light for that person or those people. But who are the people in our lives that we're allowing to influence us? Who are the people we're fellowshipping with, sitting with at the table to be like? Who are those people? Because these leaders were influencing them. And so he says, when these people eat with you in your fellowship meals, commemorating the Lord's love, they're like dangerous reefs that can shipwreck you. So not everyone who even says they're Christian is a Christian. We have to remember this banner of Christianity today is a mess. Like, what people think of that label can be a million different things. And they can speak on behalf of that label. They can act on behalf of that label, and yet can be completely distorting the truth of who Jesus actually is. Christianity is being waved on political spheres in a way that they're associated as one, and they couldn't be farther from the truth in most cases. And yet people today, like I even had people commenting on our social media page here recently that they saw the advertisement for a church in this area and they assumed it was MAGA. That, oh, look, more MAGA activity, which is a political activist term on the Republican side for President Trump's campaign. Well, so people associate, they think that we are speaking on behalf of them. And so they've seen Christianity under this banner of a political party movement. And it's Jesus had much to say about our lives and how we live our lives morally, but he was certainly not what we would think of when you think MAGA. Not a rabbit trail I want to go down right now, but when you see people claiming Christianity or claiming Christ or saying they follow or saying they believe, be careful. Not everyone who says that actually is. They could be leaders leading you astray. Don't believe everything you hear on the social media. Don't believe everything you hear from me. I mean, we're looking at the scripture together. This is why we look at the Bible. We want it to inform us. We want it to tell us the truth. We don't want to hear from people. We want to hear from God. I can write a book. It may be good, probably not, but God wrote a book. Let's listen to that. That's a better option. All right. So these false leadership can be dangerous reefs that lead to shipwreck. They are like shameless shepherds who care only for themselves. They are like clouds blowing over the land without giving any rain. They are like trees in autumn that are doubly dead, bearing no fruit. No fruit, no spiritual fruit, no light, no help. They're like wild waves of the sea, churning up from the foam of their shameful deeds. They're like wandering stars, doomed forever to the blackest darkness. Some powerful illustrations Jude provides for us there. And then it goes on to Enoch, who lived in the 7th generation after Adam, back in Genesis, who prophesied about these people, these types of people, these false shepherds, these false teachers. He said, listen, the Lord is coming with countless thousands of his holy ones to execute judgment on the people of the world. He will convict every person of all the ungodly things they have done and all the insults that ungodly sinners have spoken against them. And so in the very end of this, he actually refers to good leadership, godly leadership. Yes, there is bad leadership among you, and you need to be very careful for bad leadership. Why? Because everything rises and falls on leadership. And so Jude is obviously, from reading this letter, extremely concerned that leaders have come in and are distorting the truth of the gospel. But in the end of that little passage there, he reminds us that ultimately God is the authority and that God will make all things right in the end. And if you felt conviction by what that last little line was, that he will come back and convict those of us in sin, then that's something you got to work out with God. That's something that all of us have to work out with God. Do I have any sin in my own life? Have I spoken against the Lord? Have I rejected the Lord as my authority in life? Is he my authority? Do I believe that he has the right and rule and reign over every area of my life? Or is there any area of my life that I'm still sitting in the driver's seat? Because to follow Christ is to take the passenger seat and to let him, to quote, I think the famous theologian Carrie Underwood, let Jesus take the wheel. All right. My desk is going up and down on us, trying to get me to shut up now. So I'm going to stop there. I hope this was encouraging to you. As always, our goal is to help people follow Christ. If you have questions or comments, I'd love to hear them. Have a blessed day.